And Crystal Ball. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us, Rev.
Congressman.
Good to be back, Al.
Good to have you. Congressman, let me go to you first. Pretty blunt talk from the president today. Let me ask you straight out. Are your colleagues across the aisle finally getting the message?
Look, I think they are, even though it takes a minute for it to settle in. They had some problem processing the fact that he actually got elected and reelected. So it takes a little while. But I intend to finish my service in the Congress in about 10 years, as long as if my district keeps me there. And I hope that we never spend another day in this kind of nonsense. We spent 3 weeks on nothing, getting the government open and paying our bills that the president has not spent $1 that the Congress hasn't appropriated. To act as if he's the spender, all spending is authorized by the Congress. And we need to pay our bills. I think I said on your show last week that the president wasn't going to compromise. He didn't equivocate 1 inch. And I think that he's making it clear that going forward, the Congress has to do its work, and their job is to produce a budget. So now we had the Budget Committee, had their breakfast meeting this morning, and they need to work through the differences between the Senate budget and the House budget. And if they can unify their position, then we can move our country forward.
Well, Crystal, the president said exactly that. In fact, he said that he challenged the Congress to stop lurching from crisis to crisis. Watch this.
Nothing has done more to undermine our economy these past 3 years than the kind of tactics that create these manufactured crises. There's no good reason why we can't govern responsibly, despite our differences, without lurching from manufactured crisis to manufactured crisis.
Isn't this really where we have to try and go, Crystal, to go from this governing from manufactured crisis to manufactured crisis, as the president said, to where we get down to governing based on the needs of the American people?
That's exactly right. And the problem with this Congress, I mean, we could call them a do-nothing Congress, but they're worse than that. Because of the Republicans in the House and folks like Ted Cruz, they are actually destructive. We didn't just have a debate for the past 3 weeks about nothing. We actually were destroying economic growth in this country. I mean, that's the thing is I'm glad the government's reopened. I'm glad the debt ceiling is lifted. But we're looking at another fight just a couple of months down the road. And so this all comes down to, it doesn't come down to the president. It doesn't come down to Ted Cruz. It doesn't even come down to the Tea Party Republicans. It comes down to John Boehner. What does he want to do? What kind of a speaker does he want to be? Because there are a lot of good folks in the Democratic Party who would love to partner with moderate Republicans to actually get things like immigration reform and a budget deal passed. John Boehner himself could make the decision to go in that direction.
But what's troubling, Congressman, when you look at the potential Republican presidential candidates, look how they voted. They all voted no. That includes Congressman Paul Ryan, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Rand Paul. They voted no. They voted for default. I mean, what does that say about where the party is, the Republican Party?
Well, look, we can't allow them to drive us into becoming a deadbeat nation. And I want to agree with what Crystal said. You know, when the best speaker of any house that's ever served was Willie Brown in California. When he took over, he created a bipartisan leadership team in the California House, Democrats and Republicans. Boehner can lead the Congress. He can't lead the Tea Party wing of his party. He's going to have to leave them aside if he wants to help move our country forward. We need to deal with our education challenges, our other challenges that you've been so involved with, Reverend Sharpton. And what we can't spend our time doing is having these human created catastrophes. I was in Israel on Monday meeting with the president of Israel. He was befuddled that we could be in a situation where our country shut down. I mean, that we have such an important role to play in the world, and we can't afford to go to sleep at the switch. So Speaker Boehner has to do what he's done on yesterday. A majority of Republicans voted no, but a majority of the House voted yes less open for business the United States of America.
But Crystal, as you referred to about where we are in terms of some Republicans, I mentioned earlier, some refuse to admit they lost. I mean, GOP Congresswoman Cynthia Lummis said she's, quote, not prepared to suggest this has been a complete loss. GOP Congressman John Fleming warned, see, we're going to do this all over again. And this morning, GOP Congressman Matt Salmon said Republicans could have won if only they'd been more unified. Listen to this.
The party itself was very, very divided during the midst of this. I think that if we were a lot more unified and carrying one message, we would have been a lot more successful.
Crystal, this is not sounding like all of them have learned a lesson from this.
No, and that's what's really frightening here. I mean, they didn't learn a lesson from the 2011 debt ceiling situation. They didn't learn a lesson from losing the election in 2012. And I don't think that the radical elements of the party, the ones who have been essentially driving what the entire Republican caucus does, I don't think that they've learned a lesson from this either. In fact, what we really need to look at is the forces that are driving this situation, because these folks in the House, this is in their political interest to vote for default. To vote for the country to default is in their best interest, and that has not changed. In fact, you're seeing folks coming out and saying on the right, like Eric Erickson, that they want to see more primary challenges to enforce more purity on the Republican Party in the House. I mean, that is a scary situation. It could get worse before it gets better.
Well, I'm going to have to leave it there. Congressman Chaka Fattah and Crystal Ball, thank you both for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rob.
Let me say I'm glad the government is back open. I'm glad that the debt limit has been dealt with, but I don't think we can rest until we have gotten past the next deadlines, and we must remain focused on moving the agenda of this country ahead. Don't forget to watch Crystal on The Cycle weekdays at